I'm Margaret Lewin, and I want to first thank you for stopping by to take a look at my video. What I'm doing a video on today is how to get some really nice clean points on your hourglass block. Quite a few people have asked me how I managed to get my points so well defined, and I thought this would be a good place to start with a video. So here we go. Alright, so you can see I've got my block. What I'm making this quilt out of is Bally crackers, and what they are is 40 pre-cut 10-inch squares. So here I've got my two layers. What you do in this quilt is you want some contrast in it, so I've got a dark block and a lighter valued block. I'm going to lay one on top of the other. And then I'm going to take my Frixion pen. I don't know if you've seen these at your local quilt shop or not yet, but these are great pens to use. And the reason why I like them so much is because when you iron them, the mark disappears. So it's perfect. So I'm going to take my pin and my Creative Grids ruler, and I'm just going to mark from one corner diagonally to the other corner. I'm going to draw a line. And once I've drawn my line, then I'm going to make certain that my blocks are as lined up as they possibly can be. And I'm just going to take two pins to hold it in place. So I'm going to pin it on each side of that line. And the next step is I'm going to go over to my sewing machine. So I'll meet you at the sewing machine. Alright, we're over at the sewing machine, and the next thing that I need to do is get this block lined up, and I need to sew a scant 1/4 of an inch on both sides of my line. So I'm going to line up my block just so that I can just about see that line on my 1/4 inch foot, and I'm just going to sew right down. This process doesn't take long. This is really a pretty quick and easy block to make, but I'm just nice straight sewing. I'm letting the sewing machine do its thing, and I'm just guiding it through to keep it going as straight as possible. You'll notice I have not taken my pins out. I leave those in there because I want to keep it stable. Almost at the end of this one. And I'm just going to turn it around. Once I get it turned around, we'll go back and we'll do the next side. And here we go. Again, I'm just letting the sewing machine do the work, and I'm really just guiding it through. Okay, time to go back to the cutting table. I'll meet you over there. Alright, so we're back at the cutting table, and what I need to do now is I need to cut right on this line that I had drawn earlier. So I'm going to take my ruler, line it up to the marked line, and I'm just going to make a nice clean cut across. Once you've done that, it's off to the ironing board. So you'll see at the ironing board I've flipped them over. I've put the darker side on top. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do what's called setting the seam. We really need to set this seam before we go opening it and pressing it open. So I'm going to just do a nice press on each of my two seams. And then once I've done the press, then I'm going to open it up. And I'm going to press to the darker side. So you can see I'm just holding this so that it's rolling right over where I need it to. And now I'm going to do this block. holding this. And when I hold it, what actually happens is the seam really falls right into place for me. So now I've pressed both of these. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over and just double check and make sure that I didn't have any additional creases on this side, and just do one more press, and I'll do the same thing on this one. One more press. So now it's back to the cutting table again. Meet you over there. Alright, so now that I've sewn my 1/4 of an inch on each side, I'm going to take my rotary cutter and my ruler again, and I'm going to cut these two right in half. Our next step is back over to the ironing board. Now that we've got our blocks pressed, we need to stack them again. So I'm going to stack them, and what I'm doing this time is I really need to match this seam up underneath. They need to really butt right up to one another. I'm going to try to show you what I'm doing. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this seam and I need to butt this seam right up next to it, so that what happens when I sew it is my points are as close as I can possibly get them without them overlapping. So again, I'm going to lay this block down, then I'm going to lay this one on top of it, and you can actually feel where these two blocks match up when you put it together. They just kind of cozy right up next to one another. It does take a little bit of fussing sometimes, but that's okay. And see, I can feel right, see how they're overlapping? You can feel it when you press down on it. I'm going to get those lined up good and tight. I can feel that I'm overlapping here a little bit. Okay, I feel pretty good about this now. So my next step is I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to draw from one corner to the other again. Now the next step is what I think really gives me my nice perfect points. Is I'm going to take and make sure that I'm tucked right in there together. Still not quite have it. There we go. Now I can feel it lock right in. I'm going to take my two corners and I'm going to line them right up. Make sure that they're nuzzled good together. And then I'm going to take a couple of pins. And what I do when I pin my blocks, I know I have to sew a 1/4 on both sides. So I'm actually going to go just a little bit farther out, and I'm going to pin it right in that seam allowance. So I've got a little bit of a bite back here. What this does is it really locks that seam together. So I'm going to do it over here on this side too. And now I'm ready to sew on a 1/4 of an inch on each side of my line. So I'll meet you over at the sewing. Alright, we're back over at my sewing machine, and now I'm going to sew that scant 1/4 again like we did before. And it's done in the exact same way. You just sew right on down on each side of that line. Real quick and easy. And I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to sew back down on the other side. Put my thread out a little bit more. Here we go. You'll notice that I didn't take my pin out. Where I pinned it, I was far enough out so that my pin didn't hit the presser foot, so that I could leave it right in there to keep my fabric nice and stabilized. Alright, so we're done. I will meet you back over at the cutting table again. Okay, back over at the ironing board, and what we're going to do here is we're going to set our seams again, because that is such an important step. And once I've set my seams, I'm going to open it up just the way I did before. Just going to hold the fabric and let it roll right over where it belongs. And this is where I get really excited, because you can see my nice, clean point. I'll do the other one. And again, we've got a nice clean point. So our next step is we're back over to the cutting board for the final step. Alright, so we're back over to the cutting table. Our last step is to trim this block up. The pattern calls for 40 of these blocks in total, and one of the first steps it told me to do was to cut the sashing strips. I didn't, and the reason why I didn't was because the pattern called for 9-inch sashing strips. Well, what would have happened if I had done a greater than a scant 1/4 inch and ended up with 8.5-inch blocks, and I've cut my sashing strips at 9? I'd have to go back and recut them. The other thing, what happens if I'd ended up sewing more like 1/8 of a seam instead of a 1/4? Well, then I would have had sashing strips that weren't long enough. So what I always do is do all of my blocks first. So I will make all of my hourglass blocks. Then once I have them all done, I'll measure them all, take the measurement of the smallest block, and that will be the size of all my blocks. So when I go to trim them up, what I'm going to do is take a large ruler, large block ruler, and I'm going to put my 4.5, because my blocks are supposed to be 9, right in the center, and I would make certain that the diagonal line is perfectly matched up, and I will just trim. I'll rotate the block and put it back on the 4.5 again, make sure the diagonal lines up, and I will just trim it again. That way every single one of my blocks are going to be the same size, so when I go to put it on my gamma long arm, I won't have any problems with puckering or gathering in an area that it doesn't belong. So here's the block. I've got a bunch of them done. You can see I got a few different ones done. I'll show you a couple more of them. Here's another one. And here's my last one that's all done. So what I will do is go ahead and finish all my blocks. Once I get them all done, I will trim them up. Thank you so much for stopping by and viewing my video on the hourglass block. I can't wait to get this quilt done and get it on my long arm and see what it all looks like done. So stop back again and I'll have another tutorial on how I put this all together. Thank you, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Enjoy quilting!